Hey everyone, Logan Hertz here with Hazeltine LLC. I had a really interesting meeting with someone. It was a very good meeting, and it brought out some themes that I thought I would want to talk about. Explaining the value that a good insurance agent slash financial professional, but here really I'm talking about more of an insurance agent like myself. And of course, I take a broad perspective and look at everything, but I'm not a financial advisor. I don't do investments. And I want to just talk about some of the value that we can provide because sometimes I think it can be hidden. And oftentimes people may not realize how much value a good insurance agent can provide. So I had a really good meeting with a prospect. He wanted to talk about velocity banking and infinite banking and how to combine the two. And he had already started his journey. So we had a good conversation. But this isn't so much about that meeting as it is about the themes that it brought out. He was actually doing infinite banking already with another agency, a good agency that I'm familiarized. They are officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute for what that's worth. They had him in a good whole life policy with a good carrier. And of course, every time I see another whole life policy, I twitch a little bit because I always would design it slightly differently, but it was good. It's perfectly fine. One of the things that I realized though when I spoke with him is there were quite a few things that we discussed that he did not know. First of all, he didn't know his human life value. Human life value is really important. When you go to take out life insurance and you want to decide how much life insurance you need, maybe you should ask another question, which is how much life insurance are you eligible for? What is your economic human life value? Who are the experts at determining your economic human life value? The answer is not you or me. The answer is the actuaries at the life insurance company. And one of the most valuable things that I do when I meet with a client is I tell them what their human life value is, right? So if you have a house and you're getting homeowners insurance, you probably know what your home is worth, right? If you have a car, you probably have a rough idea of what that's worth, and that's going to inform the sort of insurance you're going to get. So we do the same thing with human life value and explain how that's calculated. And I explain why you should want to secure your full human life value, why that's important, right? Don't reinvent the wheel and try and figure out how much insurance you need. The actuaries of the life insurance companies have already determined that for you, and it's not just a matter of protection. It is that protecting your family should something happen to you. It's also a matter of securing your future net worth on a guaranteed basis. Okay. And then the other thing was he didn't have convertible term in place. So this agency, while they're good, they had just put him in a whole life policy. But the death benefit on that whole life policy did not secure his full insurability, and they had no coverage on the spouse either. So really, I explained to him the value of convertible term. This is really one of those things that everybody should have, and I think very few people understand that term life insurance, there's actually a lot of nuance even to term life insurance. And this was something that I realized as I was having this conversation with him. There's a lot of nuance to even term. There's a very specific form of convertible term life insurance that I typically do, and the amount and the term and all of that, there's thought and analysis that goes into it to make sure that we protect you properly. So I explained to him why this whole life policy, while it was great for infinite banking, I probably would have designed it a little differently, but it was good for infinite banking. Why you should supplement that with a convertible term policy and take out a convertible term policy on your spouse to make sure that you are fully insured, and how that convertible term policy, of course, is protecting your family. The current death benefit you have is not adequate should you, God forbid, die. And then how it's reserving your spot in line for future whole life policies if you truly want to do infinite banking. And it seemed like this agency, while they were good, they hadn't really taken the time to educate him about that. To me, any client who comes to talk to me, we're going to try to get you fully insured. And it's unlikely that a whole life insurance policy that's designed for infinite banking is going to get you fully insured. So you're going to have convertible term as well, right? And that convertible term policy is part of your infinite banking system because it's securing your future ability to expand your system. So it's a little disappointing to me to see infinite banking agencies that don't secure their customers' future right to take out future whole life policies, right? This guy could be in trouble if something happens to his health and then he cannot take out that next policy. You need to have that secured with convertible term. And he didn't really seem to understand this, even after putting a whole life policy in force. So I explained that to him. And then I was also explaining to him why the convertible term policy would actually need to be with a different carrier. Here's a really important level of nuance and a really big pitfall that many people, including life insurance agents, are not aware of with convertible term. You could take out a convertible term policy with this particular carrier, who is a good carrier, and you can do infinite banking with them. And then when you go to convert, of course, you have the guaranteed right to convert to whole life, but they limit the ways in which you can design it when you're doing a term conversion. So with this particular carrier, if you apply directly for a whole life policy, you can design it however you want. If you're doing a term conversion, though, they do limit how you design it. Some carriers do that, some carriers don't, right? So I explained to them why it would need to be a convertible term policy with a different carrier. So that's an additional level of nuance that almost nobody is aware of, right? And the way that this works is that if you make a mistake, you're probably not going to realize it until 5 to 7 years in the future. So if you took out a convertible term policy with this company, you would think you're reserving your spot in line for a future infinite banking style policy. And then let's say 5 years later, you try to convert it. Then you would discover that they're not going to let you convert it to just any whole life policy you want. And you really couldn't do an optimal infinite banking style policy because of the way they limit it. Even though you could with that company, you cannot do it with a conversion. So again, I think convertible term is so important and there's so many nuances to it that people don't realize. And so I've had clients of mine where we take out convertible term policies and then later we convert them. And those clients probably don't realize how many pitfalls I've helped them avoid by putting them in the right convertible term policy with the right carrier so we can convert it to the right policy when the time comes, right? Because not all convertible term policies are created equal. What's it convertible to? That's the question. And even if you're working with a really good mutual company that has great policies for whole life for infinite banking, which this company did, that doesn't mean you can do that with a convertible term policy when you go to convert, right? So again, I think that this is really what separates the men from the boys is when life throws you a curveball, there's some really important nuance. And so when you take someone through the process, they may not see all of the nuances that you're doing behind the scenes, all the ways in which you're navigating it. So I'm trying to communicate in this video why it's so important to be working with a good agent who really understands infinite banking and who really understands all the nuances, not only of whole life insurance, but of convertible term. Because what I just told you is something that I think a lot of good life insurance agents don't understand, because unfortunately, a lot of those good agents don't understand the importance of convertible term. And as a result, since they're not working with a lot of convertible term, they don't know the nuances of it. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are anti-term because they view it as term versus whole life. I don't view it that way. I view convertible term as part of your infinite banking system. It's not a supplement to your infinite banking system. It's part of it. So you need to secure your full human life value with a combination of convertible term and whole life insurance. And maybe to start, it'll be 100% convertible term because you're not yet ready for whole life. You don't yet have the cash flow. That's fine. And then we'll convert them over time. A good life insurance agent will tell you what your human life value is. The start of the conversation is not how much death benefit do you need, it's how much death benefit are you eligible for, the art of the possible. Okay. And the start is not whole life insurance, the start is convertible term, right? So these are some of these really important nuances that a lot of people may not be aware of. And you're probably not seeing all the pitfalls that I'm avoiding, all the things that I'm navigating behind the scenes, and how much value a good agent like myself can really add, and how much nuance there can be to even something like convertible terms. So, again, a good life insurance agent is not an order taker. If you come in and start saying, I want it like this, and I want to design this way, and I heard this, okay, hold on, back up. What are we trying to accomplish? And why are we trying to do it? Because invariably, I can find a way to navigate it probably better than an intelligent, educated layman just because they're not living and breathing this stuff the way that I am, right? There's a big difference between being educated on something, knowing about it, which many people out there are educated on the infinite banking concept, versus living and breathing it every single day because requirements and underwriting and things like that are changing all the time, right? Same thing with the first lien HELOC because I'll say things on podcasts like, oh, they'll let you go 90% loan to value. And then that bank might change their requirements. And now they'll only go 85% loan to value. And the people will get angry in the comments section. It's like, look, this stuff is changing all the time. Okay. As soon as I post a video giving specific information, that specific information is already outdated. So that's why, again, you need to meet with a good qualified expert, whether you're talking about velocity banking or infinite banking, whatever it is that you might be doing. And I also think this points out another important thing too, that if someone is officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute, I think that's a good thing in general. I used to have that stamp of approval myself. I wouldn't stand on it. I'd be careful with that. For me, it's always a red flag when someone stands on their credentials rather than on the value that they're adding. So if someone says, I'm a CFP or I'm a CPA or whatever, and they have this like official credential, that's not what's important. What's important is what value are you adding to the consumer? That's what's important. So if someone stands on, I'm officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute, I mean, the good, I'm glad you have that, but and that's not meaningless. It does mean something, but that doesn't matter as much as what value are you providing to the consumer, right? And I listened to many podcasts of officially authorized NNI practitioners who are very good that I have a lot of respect for, and they're honest too. I think while they promote the Nelson Nash Institute, I've heard them on multiple occasions being honest that yep, there are officially authorized NNI practitioners who are not very good, right? It's not it's not an imprimatur, it's not infallible, right? So you as the consumer always have to vet the financial professional. You can't ever just say, "Oh, he has this credential, therefore he's fine." That might be it's not meaningless, right? It does mean something, but you still have to vet him. So there are some things that will raise red flags to me or to others. And there is a very prominent, very visible member of the Nelson Nash Institute, officially authorized, and he's very successful. And I've actually gotten business from people who started through his process and then said, "Yeah, something doesn't feel right." And they ended up going and working with me. And when they told me some of the reasons, I was like, yeah, that would raise red flags. And one of them is this. If someone has infinite banking and something else, and by that I mean they say, hey, take out this whole life policy and then take out a policy loan and put it in my investment vehicle. That to me is a red flag. Now, I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly fine, right? You can take out a whole life insurance policy and then you can use a policy loan to finance an investment, whether it be real estate or stocks or whatever. That there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be clear on that. But in this particular case, I think most officially authorized NNI practitioners will agree that's a bit of a red flag. And the people who came to me said they felt a little pressured to take out the whole life policy and then take out a policy loan and put it in what was basically a hard money lending deal, right? So you're borrowing against your policy at 5% and they're earning 12% in hard money lending. That's great on paper. The problem is these clients are not experts in hard money lending, right? They're not seasoned real estate investors, right? So they're basically trusting that this other guy knows what he's doing. And then it becomes the same mindset that, in my opinion, is opposed to what the infinite banking concept is supposed to do, because now you're letting somebody else manage your money effectively, right? Instead of regaining control of the banking function, what you're saying is, I'm going to give over this whole system to somebody else because the numbers on the page look awesome. Because if you can get that kind of arbitrage, borrow at 5% and then lend at 12%, yeah, I'm sure those numbers look pretty good. So again, this is just to point out the obvious that if someone has the official stamp of approval of the Nelson Nash Institute, that is a good thing. That is good. But that doesn't mean that everything they do is good. There are some members of the Nelson Nash Institute officially authorized who, quite frankly, don't do a good job. And some of them do some things that raise red flags. So you have to think beyond that, right? I used to be an officially authorized member of the Nelson Nash Institute. I am not anymore. And even when I was, I never wore that stamp of approval. You never saw it anywhere on my website or on my email signature or anything like that. If someone is doing that, you got to understand that they're marketing, right? Just like when someone promotes their CFP designation or whatever designation they may have, or promotes the stamp like in their email signature on their website. We are officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute. You got to understand that's marketing, right? Because the implication is I'm superior to those other guys who are not officially authorized, which is not necessarily the case. And then my question also would be, well, if I'm looking at multiple guys who are all officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute, now how do I differentiate, right? Because there's more than one person officially authorized by the Nelson Nash Institute. This is a stream of consciousness thing, but I just thought this was an important little talk because there were some good things that came out of this meeting with this guy, which was a good meeting. He came in actually prepared and had some information ready for me. He was looking at taking out a first lien HELOC. He already had his whole life policy in force, and he wanted me to help advise him on how do you combine infinite banking with velocity banking. That is something where I've carved out a bit of a niche where I can help people combine the two to get a really nice system going. So again, the moral of the story is why it's so important to work with a good agent and how that good agent can oftentimes help you in ways that may not be as visible to you. It may just seem like he's doing things that are relatively simple, but that's just what's on the surface, right? There are lots of pitfalls he's avoiding, right? All my clients have seen when they work with me is, oh, we took out a convertible term policy and then we converted it, not understanding there's actually a lot of things I'm navigating there to make sure we take out the right convertible term policy with the right company, the right amount of death benefit, the right term, and we convert it to the right policy in the right way. And then, by the way, we still probably have term left over that we're going to convert in the future. So we want to make sure we have it with a not only a good mutual company that has good whole life policies, but a mutual company that doesn't limit the design when we convert it. And again, that's one of those things that you might not even realize the consequences of that until you go to convert it. And if you're not insurable at that point, then you're stuck. Okay. So the other thing too is I actually, as a good agent, I have access to a lot of resources that the average person doesn't. So certainly I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. But if you come and ask me questions, I can get the answers, right? Whether it be on the first lien HELOC side, whether it be with infinite banking or other types of insurance. I don't know everything. I don't do everything, but I have partners who do that I've developed relationships with, right? I know how to navigate that, right? And that is a skill. Just because so first of all, a lot of this information is not publicly available, but even if the information were publicly available, that doesn't mean it's easy to get to and analyze. That's a whole skill in itself, right? There's lots of publicly available information on infinite banking, yet most people have never heard of the infinite banking concept. And those who do oftentimes find it very difficult to figure it out from the publicly available information. The problem is we have too much information, right? When I worked in consulting, we were paid a lot of money, and a lot of our projects started with basically internet searches. Doing market research, there's a whole skill behind that. Just because the information is publicly available doesn't mean there's no value in finding that information and analyzing it and dissecting it. Because ultimately, the information itself is meaningless. It's how do you interpret and execute on that information in the right way. Reminds me how my natural doctor, right? She does research and I'll do research too. I'm trying to figure stuff out with regard to my health, but she's way better at it because she has access to more resources than I do and she knows how to find the right information. Same thing here, right? So again, I'm just trying to reiterate how a good agent can really help you, how there's actually a lot of nuance involved here. I actually had a comment on my YouTube section confirming this from some people where they discovered more nuance when you go to execute. Right. And when people try and do it themselves, first of all, when it comes to life insurance, obviously you need an agent to put it in force. That's the only way you can do it. But a good agent is going to help advise you. You're going to have more of a strategic conversation about what are you trying to accomplish. And then that agent will help you find the right way to implement it. He's not going to be just an order taker where you tell him, here's what I want. I want it designed this way, blah, blah, blah. If you come to me with that, I'll be like, okay, that's fine. But I'm going to ask you why. Like, why do you think it needs to be designed this way. And usually I'm trying to get to, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And maybe you are right. Maybe that is the right way to design it. But almost invariably, I find out he heard something on a podcast that said dogmatically it has to be this way and not that way, which, by the way, that's another red flag, right? There are, of course, some principles that need to be in place if you're going to do infinite banking. Definitely. There are some rules to navigate for sure. But usually there are agents out there who try to simplistically say it has to be done my way with this specific company or this specific kind of case design. And if someone is saying that, they're trying to differentiate themselves in an artificial way, okay? Because there is no one right way to design a case, right? There's a right way for you, for your situation, but there's no one right way in the abstract. This is just more going along the theme of how a good agent can help you, how maybe how there can be a lot of nuance even in convertible term policies, right? So a good agent can help you navigate that. A good agent is not an order taker. He's helping to advise you and solve your problems and help you to grow financially. And he will do things, if we're talking about life insurance agents, he will do things like tell you what your human life value is, explain to you why you should want to secure your full human life value, and explain to you why convertible term is an important part of the solution. Yes, we're talking about infinite banking, but if you're talking about infinite banking, you need to be talking about not just whole life insurance, but also convertible term as part of your system. And if you're working with an agent who doesn't understand why human life value is important, why convertible term is an essential part of your infinite banking system, then maybe you need to be looking for an agent, another agent. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.